how you doing? This is TV and school. Вивчаємо з тобою ми англійську. How are you? Що скажеш, коли ти зустрінеш якогось іноземця? So, let's speak English. Англійська мова Шекспіра та нью-йоркських таксистів. Англійська стане у нагоді вам, бойські дівчиська.
Okay, guys, welcome back, and let's have more fun with English. Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Good morning, Olga. I'm fantastic because today we're learning about Great Britain again.
Yeah, lots of lessons on Great Britain. And Paul, today we're going to talk about inventions. Okay, Paul, can you think of any inventions that are really important to humanity?
I would have to say the escalator. For obviously old people who can't walk and people with disabilities can't walk, and also the escalators in Kiev are so long, great exercise for me to run up the top of them.
Yeah, you mean the escalator on Arsenal metro station, right?
It's huge.
Yeah, the deepest metro station in the world.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but if to go deeper into the centuries, what are the most important inventions? I would take a wheel.
A wheel, yes. Probably for society now, money.
Money, okay, and then electricity.
Yes, electricity.
Can we live without electricity? No. Okay.
If we go back to the agricultural days, maybe the tractor.
The tractor, right. Okay, guys. So let's go into the topic a little bit deeper. So, guys, the first part of your home task will be to watch this video. We'll attach a link under the YouTube video. So you will have this interactive game. You will have to choose modes. You can play casino and even put some bets. And then you will learn more about the inventions. And now let's go back to Great Britain.
Yes.
Okay, so top 5 British inventions that changed the world. Paul, can you think of any of them?
I remember at school we did lots and lots of studying about trains and Britain invented the train, steam engine.
Steam engine, yeah. Okay, and I can remember my father told me instead of bedtime stories, instead of fairy tales, he used to tell me about the theory of time by Stephen Hawking. So, no bedtime stories for me, but lots of physics. Still, it was really interesting. Well, let's see. So, they rated 5 top British inventions, and the first one is time. Paul, why is that?
Well, you can never get time back. Once you've used your time up, you can't replace it, so time is essential in life.
But is it a British invention?
I wasn't aware it was a British invention. However, I have been to Salisbury Cathedral in Wiltshire, in England, and they have one of the oldest clocks in the world.
Is it somewhere the place they call Greenwich?
Greenwich is the Greenwich Mean Time. This is important for the whole world.
And when we talk about Greenwich, actually it is the invention of the British. They invented kind of a thing that now we have all same time. Because before the 1800s, different places around the world would keep their own time according to the rising and setting of the sun. And then there was no universal time framework to connect all the cities of different countries. So, and scientists at the Greenwich Observatory changed all that in 1884 and established one universal time for all the world. So isn't that fantastic?
Yes, and I have been there. There's a big line at this place in Greenwich, and you can put 1 foot over one side, 1 foot over the other side, so you're on the east and the left and the west.
And the west, like being in two hemispheres.
2 time zones.
Being in 2 time zones.
At the same time.
At the same time. Wow, that's interesting. Okay, let's move on. And the second is the steam engine. Yeah, you were quite right. Why is it so important?
Because it was during basically it was one of the catalysts for the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, so Industrial Revolution wouldn't have happened if this engine wasn't invented. right?
Probably not, probably not.
Yes, and actually it influenced not only the British Isles, it influenced, again, the whole world, because it opened the horizons, it broadened the horizons and speeded up industry and commerce, and international trade became possible. So, and the first commercially viable steam piston engine was developed by Tom Newcomen in around 1712. Can you imagine, more than 3 centuries ago? And steam engine would go on to define the era of transport innovation and thrust the world into the cradle of the Industrial Revolution. And again, it allowed us to travel faster. Okay, so what is the next invention? What do you think?
For a British invention, maybe paper?
Paper? No, paper is a Chinese invention. Okay, and the next one is the electric motor. What's the difference between motor and engine?
I think a motor is something you could have like in your washing machine, where an engine obviously powers a car.
Yeah, so and for the engine you need the petrol or some kind of other fuel. But for motor you need electricity. Yeah, and the other British invention is the development of the electric motor. And it was the result of hundreds of crucial scientific experiments and discoveries. And actually, it was invented by Michael Faraday in 1821. Well, guys, 2 centuries ago. Very, very long ago. And his experiments demonstrated how an electric charge could be used to stimulate mechanical motion, and it paved its way for the entire history of electronics. Can you believe that all the gadgets we have now, all the washing machines and everything we have at home started back in 1821 by Michael Faraday and his invention of the electric motor. Okay, the next one.
Well, you're testing me well today, Olga. Maybe the parachute?
The parachute, well, that's a very nice invention, but we'll be talking about roads.
Oh, the roads? I thought the Romans invented the roads.
Yes, Romans invented the roads, and there are lots of Roman roads in Britain. They're still paved, and you can walk or even drive on them, right?
Yes, there's a very long Roman road in the UK. It goes for like hundreds of miles.
But what's the difference between this road you see in the picture and the Roman road?
You could not drive a car down a Roman road.
Yeah, you can just walk.
Your suspension and wheels may be just as bad as all the holes in the Kiev roads.
Maybe. Okay, so let's see. Yes, it's kind of a push to say that the British invented roads. But they invented something different. They invented the road construction as we know it today. You know that it has different layers, and it should have a hard stone layer, then it's covered with a softer absorbent surface, and that was invented by the Scottish engineer John Macadam, and during the 18th century. Again, lots of centuries ago, and those roads, probably they were even better than those we have today.
Yes.
Okay, and without these innovations, faster traveling wouldn't be possible, and we wouldn't live in the world we live today. All German highways need to say thank you to a Scottish engineer. You see? So Germans, you wouldn't have had your perfect roads without the Scottish engineer, John Macadam. Okay, and the next invention.
I've been wrong so far, so maybe, what about, let's say, the microwave?
Microwave? Well, I know that the British were mostly the first people to use them after the Second World War, but we're going to talk about the thing that nobody imagines his or her life without. It is the World Wide Web. And again, here come the British people with their inventions and with their creativity. So, dabby, you hear that all the time, right? So, Is it possible to live without www now?
No, impossible, Olga.
Yeah, even this project, even this school wouldn't be possible without the World Wide Web, because you are probably watching us on YouTube. Okay, and so the father of today's digital landscape was an English computer scientist, and his name is Tim Berners-Lee, and he created the first web browser in 1989. So how many years ago actually is that?
That's 31 years.
31 years ago. Well, I'm a little bit older, but that's really long ago. And the World Wide Web should not be confused with the internet. It's something different, and we'll have more talking about the www. Okay, so the next task is, we'll need some vocabulary for the listening activity we'll have during this lesson. So let's take a look at these words. And what is interesting for me in these words, you can see the word divide, but you can see the article. I usually use it as a verb, to divide something. But here it's a noun. So, Paul, what do you think is a divide?
Something that separates two things.
Okay, and then comes to make up. I know, make up, kind of like to make a pretty face. Make up.
No, when you maybe have an argument with your husband, the next day you become friends again.
Yeah, so you make up with people after the argument, but maybe there is something else. Then comes universal.
It can be used for many purposes.
Mm-hmm. So like universal language, for example. Mm-hmm. Can English be called a universal language?
I think it is the most universal language.
Mm-hmm. Then comes abstract.
This is a difficult one. Maybe it's something that's not the norm.
Yes, when I see the word abstract, I think of Picasso and his paintings. Mm-hmm. Okay, then comes frustrated. Can you give the synonym?
Frustrated. That's a difficult one, Olga. It's like a combination of a few words, maybe sad, disappointed, stressed. You can't complete a task.
Yeah.
That's frustrated.
Okay, and then comes vague.
Yeah. So if you ask me a question and I don't understand it, I can say, Olga, can you give me more clarity because you didn't give enough detail in your question? Okay,
and then comes a network.
This is like the World Wide Web, or like you have a circle of friends. So many people on LinkedIn like to do networking.
Okay, and the last one is versus.
This is like you have a competition against someone. So every time Chelsea plays somebody, it's Chelsea versus.
Well, guys, now you're ready to match the definitions of the words to them, actually. Okay, so let's see the first one. Compared with or against. So, which one do you think is the correct answer? And it's versus. Is that right, Paul?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay, the next one. A big system consisting of many parts that are connected together. And guys, that makes a network. Yes? Let's go to the next one. And to make a big thing or a number from smaller things or numbers. It means to make up. Yeah, not only to be friends, but to build something, yes? To make a big thing of number from smaller ones. After you divide them,
so like
then you make them up.
Construct.
So you can see that this phrasal verb has different meanings. At least now you know 3. To make a pretty face, to do a makeup. Then to make up, to start being friends again. And the third one, to make a big thing or number of things from smaller ones.
And I have a fourth one. When you,
which one?
You don't lie, but you make up a story, an excuse.
Yeah, and the fourth one from Paul. You see, one word, 4 meanings. Okay, the next one, please. Annoyed or upset because you cannot achieve what you want. And Paul, as you said, it is frustrated. Okay, the next word. Something that exists as an idea, not a real thing, you can see and touch. I can't touch some abstract things, like friendship or love, they are abstract. Okay, the next one, a difference or separation. It's a divide. Yeah, so I divide something, I can divide something, I divided something, and here is a divide. It can be both a noun and a verb. Okay, and let's go further. Not very clear or detailed, Paul, it's
Vague.
vague. And you can see the word and mind the pronunciation. Once again, Paul.
Vague.
Vague. Okay, let's continue. And existing everywhere and for everyone, it's
Universal.
universal. For everyone. English is open for everyone. Okay, so we're ready to the listening task. Guys, you have to check your understanding while listening, and you have to say whether the sentences are true or false. Paul will provide you the listening task, so please be careful while listening to him, and you will be able to hear the listening twice. Okay, before Paul starts listening task, let's read all the statements. You have to say whether they are true or false. Okay, so the first one. HTTP is the computer language that makes the web possible. Maybe you know it from your general knowledge, but if you don't, listen carefully. The Queen of England sent the first ever email. Wow, maybe it's true. We'll see. Tim Berners-Lee thinks his invention is as close to perfect as it can be. So it means that he is pretty much comfortable and happy with his invention. The number 4, Tim Berners-Lee had to invent hypertext before he could invent the World Wide Web. You know this hypertext, when you can click and then it takes you to the website you need. Okay, number 5, he created the web because scientists at CERN didn't like to talk to each other to share ideas. Can you imagine lots of introverts in one place who don't like talking to each other? And then came the invention. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Berners-Lee boss wasn't completely positive about the idea of the web. When somebody invents something, of course, there are those people who don't believe in this invention. Then comes number 7. You can no longer visit the first ever web page. Is it true or it's not? What was the first ever web page? We'll see. And the last one. The UN and Tim Berners-Lee share a similar plan for the World Wide Web. Maybe the idea of the huge organization is the same as of one person. Okay, guys, are you ready for the listening part? So look carefully at the sentences and check your understanding.
The internet versus the World Wide Web. The internet and the web are not exactly the same thing, then? Question. No, actually, the internet has been around since the early 1970s, 20 years longer than the web. It's basically a huge network made up of smaller networks of computers. The World Wide Web is built upon the top of an internet. It's a way of sharing information in the form of web pages using a kind of computer language called HTTP. That's why URLs often start http://www, because HTTP is the language and www means the World Wide Web. By the way, no one knows why web addresses use 2 forward slashes and a dot. Even the web's inventor, Tim Berners-Lee, says these forward slashes are not really necessary. And if he could go back in time 30 years and invent the World Wide Web again, he would then take them out. The beginning of the World Wide Web. In 1989, when British scientist Tim Berners-Lee invented the web, he was working at CERN in Switzerland. They had computers, of course, and email already existed. Queen Elizabeth II sent an email in 1976. The idea of domain names, web addresses showing the name of the organisation they belong to, like the BritishCouncil.org, also existed. They used hypertext to jump from one document to another. but none of these things worked together, so they weren't very useful. Berners-Lee was frustrated at CERN because all the scientists had different kinds of computers that couldn't speak to each other. If you wanted information, you had to remember exactly which computer that information was on and know how to use the specific programs for that computer. Berners-Lee had an idea for an imaginary information system which everyone can read. He wrote a report that suggested a way of putting the internet, domain names and hypertext together into one system. His idea was so abstract that his boss called it vague but exciting. 2 years later, in 1991, the world's first website was built at CERN, http://info.cern.ch. The site you can see now is a copy made in 1992. The digital divide. Today, 30 years later, that idea is no longer vague and is part of many people's everyday reality. The web connects about 55% of the world's population to the rest of the world via the internet. But because only half the world is connected, there is a digital divide between communities with regular internet access and those without. In North America, 95% of people have internet access, and so do 85% of Europeans. Compare this with Asia, where only half the population have internet access, and Africa at 36%. In some of the least developed countries, young people are 3 times more likely to be online than older adults. The United Nations says the world's least developed countries will have universal internet access by 2020. They expect to achieve this with the help of low-cost mobile phone services, which include the internet. This is the key to ending the digital divide. When the web is available to everyone, just like Tim Berners-Lee imagined, people everywhere can enjoy the social, educational and economical advantages it brings.
Okay, guys, you listen for the first time. Maybe you are ready to mark some of the sentences. Okay, look through them once again, mark them, and then you'll be able to listen to it once again. Okay, so some time for you to think it over.
The internet versus the World Wide Web. The internet and the web are not exactly the same thing, then? Question. No, actually, the internet has been around since the early 1970s, 20 years longer than the web. It's basically a huge network made up of smaller networks of computers. The World Wide Web is built upon the top of an internet. It's a way of sharing information in the form of web pages, using a kind of computer language called HTTP. That's why URLs often start http://www, because HTTP is the language and www means the World Wide Web. By the way, no one knows why web addresses use 2 forward slashes and a dot. Even the web's inventor, Tim Berners-Lee, says these forward slashes are not really necessary. And if he could go back in time 30 years and invent the World Wide Web again, he would then take them out. The beginning of the World Wide Web. In 1989, when British scientist Tim Berners-Lee invented the web, he was working at CERN in Switzerland. They had computers, of course, and email already existed. Queen Elizabeth II sent an email in 1976. The idea of domain names, web addresses showing the name of the organisation they belong to, like the British Council.org, also existed. They used hypertext to jump from one document to another, but none of these things worked together, so they weren't very useful. Berners-Lee was frustrated at CERN because all the scientists had different kinds of computers that couldn't speak to each other. If you wanted information, you had to remember exactly which computer that information was on and know how to use the specific programs for that computer. Berners-Lee had an idea for an imaginary information system which everyone can read. He wrote a report that suggested a way of putting the internet, domain names, and hypertext together into one system. His idea was so abstract that his boss called it vague but exciting. 2 years later, in 1991, the world's first website was built at CERN, http://info.cern.ch. The site you can see now is a copy made in 1992. The digital divide. Today, 30 years later, that idea is no longer vague and is part of many people's everyday reality. The web connects about 55% of the world's population to the rest of the world via the internet. But because only half the world is connected, there is a digital divide between communities with regular internet access and those without. In North America, 95% of people have internet access, and so do 85% of Europeans. Compare this with Asia, where only half the population have internet access, and Africa at 36%. In some of the least developed countries, young people are 3 times more likely to be online than older adults. The United Nations says the world's least developed countries will have universal internet access by 2020. They expect to achieve this with the help of low-cost mobile phone services, which include the internet. This is the key to ending the digital divide. When the web is available to everyone, just like Tim Berners-Lee imagined, people everywhere can enjoy the social, educational, and economical advantages it brings.
Okay, guys, so are you ready to check your understanding? Well, that was a huge amount of information, but it was really interesting. So, the first one, HTTP, is it a computer language? True or false? Well, guys, it is true. It's the computer language. The second sentence, the Queen of England sent the first ever email. Paul, do you remember the date?
I do remember the date because it was one of the hottest years on record in the UK. In 1976, we had a very hot summer. So
1976?
Yes.
Well, very hot summer, and the Queen of England sent the first email. So the statement is false. Why is it false? Because we don't know whether she was the first one to send the email.
Ah.
But still, it was very long time ago. Okay. The next sentence, if the inventor thinks that his invention is as close to perfect as it can be. And actually the statement is false. He was frustrated at first and he had to do lots of adjustments. The next one, Tim Berners-Lee had to invent a hypertext before. Is it true or false? Well, the statement is false. The hypertext already existed and they used it to navigate from different Word documents. And still he didn't need to invent it. Number 5, he created the web because scientists at CERN didn't want to talk to each other. And actually that was not the reason. Maybe that helped the scientists to talk, but these were not the scientists who didn't want to talk. These were their computers. They all had different systems and they couldn't communicate. The machines couldn't communicate, not the people.
We have a word in English when the different systems don't communicate. It's called compatible, so they're not compatible.
Yeah, so the computers, the machines were not compatible, not the people. Number 6. His boss wasn't completely positive. Let's see. And that's true. Okay, number 7. You can no longer visit the first ever web page. Is it true?
It's true. You cannot longer. Yeah.
Yeah. So you cannot. You can no longer visit the page. You can visit the copy of this web page. The UN and Tim Berners-Lee share a similar plan. So it is true. Their vision is that everybody has the internet connection and use the World Wide Web. I see. Okay, guys, so I hope that you did this task quite well. So Guys, did you like the lesson on inventions? I hope you did. While doing this lesson, I made a huge research, and actually this presentation is my project on British inventions. We want you to make your own project about any of British inventions. You can take the ones we discussed at the beginning, for example, time or roads, and make a project on them, or find other British inventions that changed the world and make your own one. It can be of any kind. It can be a video project, it can be a PowerPoint presentation, or any other presentation of any kind you know and like doing. Well, guys, be creative, be innovative, and make some inventions.
Yes, and there are many modern inventions that you could choose, not just ones from a long time back in history.
Okay, guys, stay tuned and see you next time. Bye.
Bye.